Hi guys, today we're going to talk about multiplying decimals using models. And the I can statement we're working on is I can multiply decimals using models and the standard algorithm. And if you couldn't tell from the title, we are focusing really on the use of models to multiply so that we can find patterns and make observations that will help us develop and understand the algorithm for multiplying decimals. We had talked before about how we multiply using tiles. I'm sure you've seen this 100 times. And we've also talked about how the word of typically means to multiply. And let's look at that just real quick again. Here, you'll notice I have two columns of 3 tiles each. Or I can use the multiplication problem. 2 times 3 equals 6. And I can count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tiles. 2 times 3 equals 6. And I've shown it by 2 columns of 3 tiles each. Let's take that idea and use it to help us develop an understanding of multiplying with decimals. And we're going to do that using a hundreds grid here. So a 10 by 10 grid, which means I have 100 pieces. Now, this whole 10 by 10 grid is going to represent one whole. So if the whole thing was shaded in, and we know this, if the whole thing was shaded in, that would represent one whole. But we're not going to do that here. Here, we're going to look at how we would model the problem 4/10 times 5/10. Or if I was writing it as a fraction, 4/10 times 5/10. So every problem that we are going to look at today and use our companion guide to follow is going to actually represent the same equation and same values in 2 different ways. So let's look at this. Let's start by saying, okay, I'm not going to multiply 4 whole times 5 whole. I need to multiply 4/10 by 5/10. So going across, let's look at what 4/10 of just one row would look like. Out of the 10, that means I would shade in 1, 2, 3, 4. So here I've got 4/10 of one row shaded in, okay? And I'm going to shade down not a full column, but 5/10 of a column, okay? So I've got my 4/10 being shaded down 5/10 of a column. So let's look at what we've represented here. The 4 shaded across represents not a whole, but 4/10 of a whole. And the 5 shaded down represents not 5, but 5/10 of all of the rows being shaded down. So what I have here really is 4/10 times 5/10, which equals, well, what does it equal? What part of the whole, because I didn't shade in the whole grid, what part of the whole do I have? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I have 20, but I don't have 20 whole grid shaded in. I have 20 out of the 100 that I need to make a whole. So I have 20 out of the 100, or 20 hundredths. Okay? Let's look at some examples, and let's pull out your companion guide that we were looking at, that you were given for this quadrant to help you with this video. And you're going to write your answers in here to kind of guide you through. So let's look at the first one together. I'm going to give you a model, and in this case, I'm going to give you the model right here. And you're going to need to write the decimal and fraction equation for this model. So let's look at that. Well, how many columns have I shaded across, or pieces across have I shaded? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 6/10 of a row was shaded across. And how much of each column did I shade in across those 6/10? Well, 2. So I have shaded in 2/10 of all of the possible rows across, okay? So the decimal equation that I've got here is 2/10 times 6/10, which equals, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 out of the 100 I could possibly have to make one whole. I don't have a whole grid yet. So on my companion guide, I am going to write that down. I'm going to write that I had 6/10 times 2/10, which equals 12/100. And as a fraction, because it's written the same way we read a decimal, 6/10 times 2/10 equals 12/100. Okay? Let's move on to number 2. Now, at any point when you think you've got this, go ahead and pause the video and see. Give it a try, then press play and see how you did. Okay? For number 2, I'm looking across and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the 10 squares shaded across, which would represent 8/10. And going down, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the 10 possible rows shaded. So the multiplication problem I'm showing here is 8/10 times 5/10 equals, well, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh my gosh, this is going to take a long time. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 40. Is there a better way? Do you think? Maybe you want to jot it down as an observation on the back, an easier way to do this besides counting 40 squares, because that's a lot. If I were to write the fraction form, I would have 8/10 times 5/10 equals 40/100 or 40/100. Okay, so make sure you fill those two into your companion guide. And let's go ahead and try number 3. So here's number 3. You'll notice we've shaded 2 across, which represents 2/10 of the columns or of one row. And we have shaded down only 2 out of the 10 of each column. Okay? And so our equation would be 2/10 times 2/10 equals 4 what? This is 4 out of 100. So remember, as a decimal, that means the 4 is going to go in the hundredths place because there are 4 hundredths that are shaded in. If I put it here, that would mean 4/10, or that's the same as if we look back at number 2, 40 hundredths. That's very different from only having 4/10. So let's be careful with our place value as we work through these problems. 2/10 times 2/10 equals 4 hundredths. Okay. Let's try another. Number 4. Now, number 4 is going to be a little tricky here because look, I think we can still do this. Here in number 4, I needed to use 2 grids to show this problem. So if I'm looking all the way across, I've shaded in here 1 whole, and over here I've shaded in 4/10, which really means if I put them together, I have got 1 and 4/10 total shaded across, because I've shaded across 1 whole row and I needed 4/10 more of a second grid to shade across what I need. But shading down, you'll notice on both grids, I've only shaded in how much? 3/10. So what I'm really showing here is 1 4/10 times 3/10. And when I do that, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14 columns of 3/10. Let's look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That's a lot. There's an easy way. But when I count them all up, I notice that I have 42. And would these all fit on one grid? If I cut these out and moved them here, they'd all fit. If I took these and moved them here, I would actually have what? All of these shaded in, which would give me 42 hundredths. And as a fraction, I would put 1 4/10 times 3/10 equals 42 100ths. Okay. I'm going to give you the next 4 problems. You can go ahead and pause the video and try these problems out on your own. And when you're all done, go ahead and press play. Okay, let's see how you did. Okay, so here are the answers that you should have in your companion grid. Take a minute, look them over, check your work. Let one of us know, or let a teacher know, let me know if you have any questions on any of these. And we're going to move on to the bottom section of the companion guide, which some of you may have already figured out and went ahead and did. So you can either watch the video along with me, or you can, if you've already got it done, you might want to fast forward. Remember, you can pause at any time to try something out and give it a shot. But here we go. Let's look at our companion guide, okay, to this video. And here you have 4/10 times 4/10 equals 1600ths. So that means going across, I need to shade in 4 rows and 4 columns. Okay, so here would be 4/10 times 4/10, which is, if I were to go ahead and count up all my squares, and that's a great way to check, I should have 16 out of my 100 squares that are shaded in. So here I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So I'm good. For number 10, I am shading across 2 columns and going down 7 columns here. And I can go ahead and even check. I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 hundredths shaded in, so I know I'm good there. How about you pause the video, try 11 and 12 on your own, and then press play, and we'll go over the answers. Okay, let's go ahead and check your work. You should have shaded across 5 to represent 5/10 and shaded down those 5 columns, repeated it 8/10 of a time, or 8 of the rows. Looking at number 12, you should have shaded across 8 and shaded down 3 rows of those 8 columns, or those 8/10. Okay? All right. Don't forget, if you have anything you should have written down on the back, we're going to be discussing that when you come on over and show me your completed work. And then we may also do a few more examples if needed. All right. You can go back and watch any portion of this video as many times as you need to, or the whole thing again if you still don't understand, or just actually you can just come ask me. All right. Have a good day.